Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with guest Dr. Fred Moss, keynote speaker, author, and podcast host of Welcome to Humanity. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Ann. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia. And today I'm very pleased to have Dr. Fred here with me. He is the creator of Welcome to Humanity, the True Voice course, and AI Meets Mental Health, which is really interesting. He's also a podcast host, and he's been on several, over 200, you said, podcasts as a guest. So welcome. Really pleased to have you here today.
It's really great to be here. Thank you. Yeah. And the other book I've offered, both of them are back there. The other book I wrote is something called Find Your True Voice that I'm really, really very proud of as well. And it goes with kind of the technology and probably what we're going to talk about today, because so much of what we're called psychopathology is people who have not, in a way, found their true voice, their ability to self-express effectively and thereby connect with other human beings. And that's really what we're all after, is eventually or somehow finding a way to resonating harmonically in a human connection with another human being. This is where healing emanates from. This is where love emanates from. And there's no more potent medicine than, in fact, a human connection.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. So how did you come to this with the True Voice? What's your story?
Yeah, so I could go back a long ways, probably go back a few lifetimes. We'll start off just with this lifetime. I was born into this world with a couple older brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, and my parents. And, I think I was counted on to bring a bundle of joy and a new level of communication to a family in a fair amount of chaos and disarray. And, that's exactly what I was for a couple of years. And I just brought love and joy and fun into that family. At least that's what I'm told. Now, it hasn't been continuous for the 66 years that I've been alive, and I think my brothers will vouch for that. But at the time, that was my job. And what I really saw is that it took me understanding, being with, and listening to my parents and my brothers as they had their formal discussions, whatever they were. They were communicating. I remember, vividly being in my playpen and watching them talk to each other and realize that someday I would probably be doing that. And learning how to do that effectively became the thing that I really wanted to do more than anything else in my whole life. Like, I wanted to be like my brothers. I wanted to know how to move the world, and it seemed to me that was this talking thing was the best way to get that done. So I became a talker for sure. I was a precocious kid, and with two older brothers, they taught me about things that I probably didn't have to know even before I got into school. So I knew how to read, and I knew how to write, and I knew a little bit about sex, drugs, and rock and roll too by the time that I was 5 years old. And this put me in a funny position in school where I was very talkative. And, there's no teacher in my elementary school who forgot having Fred as a student, for sure. And I was talkative and I was really smart. So they couldn't really knock me down because I was always at the top of the class in my grades. And I was also at the top of the class in causing trouble and and making people laugh and, challenging and things like that. But I really just wanted to learn how to communicate effectively. And I thought school was going to be the place that taught me that, but it wasn't. As we know, in school, you're eventually just taught to be quiet, sit down and do what the teacher says and do it like the teacher. And that's how you pass. So this was disappointing for me. And I thought, well, somewhere along the line, I was already in the higher reading groups and all. Somewhere along the line, I'm going to learn how to communicate. Maybe it's in the next school, maybe junior high. But in junior high, it got worse. And then in high school, of course, it got worse again. So I was like, well, college, that's where it's going to happen. I mean, that's where all the freedom and self-expression is. So I went to the University of Michigan and again learned that it wasn't going to happen in the classrooms, that open discourse was going to be encouraged. It happened in Ann Arbor for sure. That was where I really did get to find some voice, but not in the school setting. So I eventually dropped out of college and came out to Berkeley to find my life. I got on a bus and, just like, what am I about? And I had a great summer at Berkeley, but it wasn't sustainable. And then when I tried to go back to school again, there was this new industry that was just birthing that my parents thought I would be good at, and they thought that it had a future. And the name of the industry was computers. And computers, the biggest computer in Michigan was over there at the University of Michigan. It's like a 2-acre facility that did batch jobs and punch cards and all the stuff. And I came back to study computers, but I wasn't going to do batch jobs and punch cards the rest of my life either. So dropped out again, actually, and again came out to California. And somehow with the idea that I would find myself. But ultimately, My mom's like, I told my mom, I'm not going to go back to school under any conditions ever again. It's just not a place to learn. And she's like, well, that's okay, but you have to get a job. So she got me a job me a job as a childcare worker, a civil service job back in Michigan. And that's when my mental health career really started, I suppose. It was in January of 1980. And I began to be a childcare worker for some people, we'll call them kids, but what were they, 5 or 7 years younger than me, who were, in a state mental health facility. And all I did was work the afternoon shift. And I finally learned how important communication was, because when I could communicate and resonate and really just respect these people for who they are and who they're not even healing for the kids, healing for both of us, for everyone. When we connected, there was a new level of resonating harmonic beauty that would happen. So I really wanted to bring that forward. My brother was already a psychiatrist, 14 years older than me. He had already become a psychiatrist, and I could see that psychiatry really needed this, because psychiatry was changing rapidly at the time. Prozac had just been introduced, and when Timmy and Tony would get into a fight on the unit, we would call the psychiatrist, who would interview Timmy and Tony for 5 seconds and then interview us for 7 seconds and go into the nursing station and write a note. And before too long, we'd have to go retrieve Timmy and Tony, hold them down in the quiet room, pull down their sweatpants and jam them full of an injection of some antipsychotic, cocktail. And if we left them in the stupor for 24 hours, we would call that a success story. But don't fool yourself. That stuff's already happened hundreds of times in this country today. That's the way it works. Well, now, the public isn't aware that is the way it works until they think about it. Then you're like, yeah, that is probably what happens there. If they're out of line, we have to do something. So we put them in the quiet room and jam them full of stuporous medication. I was so appalled by that and saw it to be so barbaric that I was willing to go back into the school one more time and head towards being a doctor and being a psychiatrist and bringing communication back into the field. And I could, Prozac was introduced while I was in medical school, actually, which was 3 years later. I started medical school, and then, I got accepted to a great school in Chicago, Northwestern, and then, went to Chicago, went to Northwestern, and then got my residency and came out. And by now, medicines were like a key thing all of a sudden. When you even get to this point in time, you ask somebody, why, what is a psychiatrist different than everyone else? Oh, they're the ones who prescribe medicine. That's the answer. That's that we've been taught, we've been programmed. And indeed, I had to write a bunch of medicine. And over the next decades, I wrote a ton of medicine and I diagnosed a lot of people. And I was never aligned with diagnosing anybody with anything. As far as I was concerned, you're Lorianne, that's your diagnosis. That's it. You don't have a diagnosis. You don't have some alphabet soup diagnosis. I don't have it that way. I have it that you're struggling to get through life just like all of us are, certainly just like I am. And, you make your mistakes, you bumble along, you tumble along, you get slapped around, and you have some things that you succeed at and some things you really master. And that's the way life goes. And, you don't have to have a diagnosis, and you certainly don't have to take medications that are made in laboratories that tend to actually perpetuate the symptoms they're marketed to treat. But there I was kind of off balance, in a state of incongruence with myself, and duplicitous in some ways. And so I couldn't really continue at that level. I had heartache and soul sacrifice every single day. It was like, nah, not exactly. People would come to me and they'd really want me to confirm that there was something wrong with them. I was like, I'm not sure there's anything wrong with you. I'm sorry, and people it's funny in psychiatry more than any other field. If you tell somebody there's nothing wrong with them, they get furious. It's like, what is that? There's no other field in medicine where that's the case. If you go to an oncologist, you go to a cardiologist and they say you're good, you're like, good, I'm good.
Yeah, they get excited. Yeah.
In psychiatry, if you tell someone they're good, they just call you a quack and go next door and get real help that can confirm there's something wrong with them. We argue for our limitations as humans. That's how we do it. So people want to know there's something wrong with them. They want that alphabet soup. I want bipolar. They don't really want bipolar. If they get bipolar, then they can say, I didn't really want bipolar, but the doctor gave it to me, and now it explains all the nonsense that I am.
Yeah.
So it really helps to relinquish the responsibility for behaviors and thoughts and actions that are not aligned with your higher self. But that's humanity. That's not psychiatric illness. That's the way life works. They've been talking about that and writing about that. We can go back a long ways. Socrates, Plato, Buddha, Jesus, we can go back all the way back to the, Shakespeare and all the sages and all the wise people over time. That's what they've always written about. And, and that's what they're still writing about. So I became somebody who, with this misalignment, I decided in 2006 and, to start doing something different, which was to take people off of medicine and to take them off their diagnosis and see what happened. I had a rip-roaring practice in Cincinnati, Ohio, second biggest practice. Marguerite had the first. And, I had lots of people, thousands of people per year. And I started taking off my low-risk patients off of medicines. And lo and behold, they got way better, like way better, like way better, like night and day better.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is interesting. These medicines are actually holding people down and maybe even causing or, increasing or perpetuating the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Like, this is really interesting. So I didn't know what to do with all that. I wanted to get to a mountaintop and scream it to everybody like, hey, this stuff's not doing what you think it is. But being violent about things isn't a good way to communicate, even though I felt violent at the time. And I've learned how to really tone it down so that I could be a podcaster. So I wouldn't have to come here and just thread things, it'd be like, shred things, I should say. And I later learned that I'm not really upset at all with the pharmacological industry. It's not upsetting to me. And neither is the medical industry, and neither is the insurance industry. These are just things. These people have created a business model that actually works. The truth is, if I created a product that induced the need to buy that product, that is a fantastic business model. Like, congratulations. Yeah. No wonder it's a multi-billion-dollar per year profit margin involved in this industry. We've never had an industry in the history of the world that has this kind of profit margin. Never, ever, never. There is no such thing as an industry with, are you kidding me? Something this small costs $200 and it's nothing but, what are you talking about? Yeah. And people line up around the block to be the first one in the morning to get to it every single day in every single city all over this country and Western Europe, everywhere. What a crazy idea.
Yeah. How
can I be upset with the people who created that? I get it. It's remarkable. And it's not the medicines. How can you be mad at powder? What are you going to do? So the more I looked at it, I began to look, where can I have an entryway? And what I realized is the entryway is exactly what we just talked about, which is that people really think it's important to find out that there's something wrong with them. And if people are confirmed that there's something wrong with them, then they think they need to be fixed. And if they can be fixed, then the next thing they think is that maybe a diagnosis and a pill will help them, or a patch or an injection or whatever they choose to do. So it's the people. It's actually getting, well, how can we stop this cycle? The way to stop this cycle is to have people get that what they're really missing is a capacity to express themselves. And what they're, one way or another, they're either not being able to listen or they're not being able to speak or express themselves for what it is that matters to them. This book here, The Creative 8, is about, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, ways to express yourself over and above verbal, the verbal exchange like we're having now, that can be very effective in reducing a sense of discomfort that usually gets equated to a mental health diagnosis. We already know that when we do art or do music or cook or dance or whatever we're doing, that for that time being, things lift. We're no longer uncomfortable. We're actually in a flow. Well, that can be sustained. You can actually do that. You can actually find a sustained level of, comfort being uncomfortable. This world is uncomfortable. Have you noticed? It's pretty uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Right? Definitely. There's nobody who's going to argue with that. It's like, it's pretty uncomfortable. And your level of maintaining yourself, you're using some skill set or some history or some patterns that you've developed in order to have that beautiful smile you have this morning. Something is working for you. Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your work, maybe it's your Maybe it's your relationship with God. I don't know what it is, but there's something that has you be able to wake up, roll out of bed, and can, find a purpose for doing all this stuff. But you certainly can relate to people who are not interested in getting out of bed this morning. I sure can. You wake up and you're like, why do I need to do this? I hear you. Well, I don't even want to, I keep make mistakes every day, or I hurt people, or people hurt me, and I don't like that. Okay, I totally get it. Or I'm not in good shape. I totally get it. I totally get it. It's like, is there a justification for being really sad and scared in this world? Oh yeah. Is it okay to be anxious in this world, to be nervous about how things are going to turn out? Oh yeah, for sure. How about the voices or the intuition you have in your head, the things that keep telling you what to do or what not to do while you're not talking to anybody? Those are called voices. If you come into an emergency room and you call those voices, you'll be admitted to a psychiatric unit right now with a new diagnosis called schizophrenia. And then you'll be jammed full of a bunch of medicine as well, against your will necessarily. And you'll be retrieved just like I retrieved Timmy and Tony, and they'll get you full of medicine. And then those medicines might induce the actual symptoms they're marketed to treat. And now you're actually hearing voices.
Yeah.
And now you have schizophrenia as confirmed by the fact that you're really hearing these, persecutory delusions or whatever. And you have a diagnosis. It's now confirmed by the fact that you're receiving the treatment for that diagnosis and you've been hospitalized a time or two. Okay. The whole process is about the horse and the cart being upturned. So again, as I really stepped back, I did some traveling around the world. I did some traveling around the country, and I was a locum tenens all over the country, and every single modality that I think psychiatry has to offer, from inpatient to outpatient to nursing homes to residential treatment programs to orphanages and homeless shelters and home visits and jails and prisons and partial hospital programs and three-quarter houses and halfway houses. And, I have had leadership positions at every one of these spaces. And then I took it around the country, actually. What is a human? What if I'm in Thailand? What if I'm in Israel? What if I'm in Italy? Like, what's universally human? And what I got is that people want to be heard. People want to be seen for who they are and who they're not. They want to make a difference on this in this planet. They want to actually leave the planet affected by who they've been. And that's true for everybody, including him and her and them. All these people you don't like, that's what they want too. No one cares if you like them. So what? I mean, so what, really? And we all want to be liked, but no one cares. No one, the world doesn't care if someone likes you or they don't like you. That's not going to change very much. So Find Your True Voice became something that was really important to me. And I, created the True Voice course, and I created the Welcome to Humanity, which was the overarching message. And now that you can see, that's a self-explanatory. It's like, yeah, Welcome to Humanity. Is almost very little that you can say where the proper answer might not be Welcome to Humanity. Whatever you say. Oh, my grandchild was born. Well, welcome to humanity. Oh, I went to Rome. Oh, welcome to humanity. Well, I stubbed my toe. Welcome to humanity. It's like welcome to humanity is really just what we got here. And it's a massive, miraculous gift that we get to experience everything from the hellishness of what it means to be human to the incredible ecstasy and beauty of what it means to be human. What a gift that we get the whole smorgasbord of all of this in this crazy life that we're attempting to live through. It's just amazing. So Welcome to Humanity created True Voice and created Global Madness and created the Undoctor. And you can see the Undoctor is someone who undiagnoses people, unmedicates people, and then undoctrinates people. And by undiagnosing, why do I do that? Because it's not the medication's problem. The problem is, what if there's nothing wrong with you? What if, in fact, there's nothing wrong with you? And what if you can actually get through life and get, oh, this disturbance, this discomfort I have, this imbalance or dysfunction, it's part of being human. Can I incorporate that? Maybe there's nothing inherently wrong with me. I'm good at some things. I'm not so good at other things. I make mistakes at a very high rate. Oh, it turns out every one of us are making a mistake at very high rates. Okay, welcome to humanity. And so I've created a technology to help people find their true voice, like really get down to business, stop being someone that you're not, in an effort to protect the person that you are. Like actually, I think it was Thoreau said, the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation and go to their graves with their songs still in them. I don't know that there's anything more tragic than living a whole life without having anyone get to know who you really were. Like amazing. Some people really do that. They really get through life and no one ever learned who they were.
Yep.
And, so there's a way to get that. There's a way to get authenticity, genuine, inner, core self communicated. And when we do that, we find our humanity. And in that humanity, we resonate like tuning forks with other humans. There are 7.8 billion other humans out there, and they will resonate with the truer you are to your own humanity. And that's when you start being able to really get the magic of what it is to be with another human, what it is to be with a group of humans. So you get that sometimes, there's people out there who disagree with you about important, divisive issues that have been developed over the last several years. So you have certain ways of thinking about this, about that, about this, climate change, or about COVID, or about racism, sex trafficking, or the election, Supreme Court, or whatever you got. You got stuff that you got thoughts about. And you're pretty sure the other side is just wrong. Okay. And some of them are so wrong. They're so wrong that you might even be considering, as many people have, dismissing them as humans. They're so wrong about that I don't want to hear anything they have to say about anything. What an incredible way to manage life. Actually disregarding humanity because you disagree with what they have to say. But have you noticed that those people, even the ones who are direct adversaries, diametrically opposed to what you have to think about something, that when they're authentic about how they got to be who they got to be, you can actually listen to them. You can actually hear them as long as they're coming from a core value of authenticity. Authenticity is so powerful that when we're authentic, even if we're in full disagreement with the person we're talking to, there's a new level of resonance and healing that takes place. True and honest healing. I might think something that you think is totally crazy about life. I don't know. About any of the topics I just said or anything. Who knows? But if I got there in an authentic way and I can express it in a way that's articulate and consistent with who I really am at my core, you're going to be able to manage it a whole lot easier. Some people think it's more important to agree than to be authentic. Authenticity just trumps agreement 100% of the time. So the technology, the Find Your True Voice technology, which comes for the True Voice course and for the Find Your True Voice book, and is really, as you can hear, an important part of who I've now become professionally, is very important. We're now creating a community, the Welcome to Humanity community. And this is a group of people who will meet every morning if they want to for a grounding, for beholding and gratitude and meditating and really getting the core of what it means to be human and being sent off in our day on a lesson or on a quote, something to consider, an inspiration. And then having access to small groups and a forum of other people who are interested in just getting grounded with their own humanity. So Welcome to Humanity is the new circle group that we're creating. We should have that out by August 1st. So I'm pretty excited about it. I met with somebody this morning about it, and I'm meeting with somebody right after this podcast about it. So it's a real deal. And it's about really getting you asked me, how did I get to, why did I get here? What was little Freddie thinking when he was bouncing out 66 years ago as the one who brings joy to my two brothers and my parents? This is what it is. This is where I finally have become. I'm right at the door of it, something even closer to why I'm here, which is that love and joy are ours to appreciate. It really is possible. And there is no level of alphabetic soup psychiatric disorder that you have that is in the way of that really prevents you from experiencing that. So that's how I become who I became.
That's very interesting. Actually, I was thinking about that because one of the things that we talk about on the other podcast is you were talking about not being able to express yourself or feel emotional and people different ways. So in bulimia, it would be, you eat it up and then you purge it. And that's how, and I always say, one of the toughest things when I quit was having to live in my humanity, to actually feel the emotions and to, and even to express them in a healthy way, not The way
Yeah,
I,
bulimia is a great example of this. I've had the opportunity over time to work with many people who were so-called, eating disorders or whatever you wanted to call them, whatever label they took on or whatever label the industry gave them over time. And one of the things about what you're saying, and given that you've been through it from that level, um, is that you take in yourself, like you take in your sustenance, or you take in I like your desires and your sustenance. There's two reasons to eat, right? Desire and sustenance. Like like that, you take that in. Like I want pleasure and I want to sustain myself. And then you have all these conflicts about what that really looks like. And maybe that looks like now you have to worry about that you took in too much, or that you're bloated, or that your body shifted and you got body dysmorphic symptoms now. And you got to get rid, like maybe you don't deserve it. Maybe you don't deserve the pleasure you just had. And so it seems like there's a seesaw that happens at that point where then have to purge it. You have an opportunity now to get that out of you before it gets like incorporated into your truest self. So you purge it quickly so that it doesn't become part of your actual reality. And that cycle, then you're like too thin, or then you're like too hungry, or then you're like in despair. And the only thing that will clear that despair is a good handful of that, whatever that food substance is. And the cycle just continues in kind of a strange addiction that is, it is a very, from a clinical standpoint, I've always said that eating disorders, whatever, again, from anorexia nervosa to bulimia nervosa and everything in between, the mixed disorders, were the most difficult people to have a conversation with and get to the bottom of for me. It's a very difficult diagnosis, if you will, for me to deal with, because ultimately, and more often than not, as you know, more often than not, it's female. It's a female, essentially tends to be female symptomology, the people who get themselves caught up in this. And I would say, well, why don't you try this, or why don't you try that? And the push on that would be to do the opposite. So I would never be able to play the game properly. I would say, well, you look great, or there's nothing, you're not too thin, or it's okay to enjoy a sandwich, or something like that. And that would only create the opposite problem back and forth. So I couldn't psych myself up enough to know exactly what to say. I think if I was to be working in an eating disorder clinic, or with a bunch of, people with this proclaimed diagnosis, I'm not sure that the way I'm talking right now might be very helpful. It's very possible that what I have to say, if just, no, let's see what we can do to just truly incorporate what it means to be human, with all your faults and all your foibles and all your, wonderful assets as well, and really incorporate it all in such a way as to get welcome to humanity, not welcome to bulimia, but welcome to humanity, not welcome to anorexia, like welcome to humanity. This is it. This is what life looks like when it's working. This is the craziness we call life.
I love it. It's funny too, because you were speaking to, of course, like I'm in my 60s as well. So the Prozac thing was big for people with eating disorders, like pretty well anything, but eating disorders, they put me on Prozac.
For sure.
And I was on it for about 2 months, and I thought, no, I know I can get through this without the drugs, and I didn't want to rely on it, and didn't make a huge difference. Of course, I wasn't on it for long, but it's that desire, because I don't want to depend on something else. I don't believe in that unless it's absolutely necessary. Like if you got a heart disease and you have to take something, right? But when it comes to this type of thing, and it's a psychiatric issue, yeah, no, I did not want to go onto the drugs. Same thing when I did hit a depression once after I lost my business, and they wanted to put me on drugs again. It's like you said, it's a thing to do. Let's just write something to make her feel better. But no, I want help so that I can get through it and not have to rely on medicine.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, you bring up a couple points that I want to just underline. Number one, let's write her a medicine so she'll feel better. Yeah, I get that that's generally the intention of a doctor who writes medicine for somebody, is that, well, let's just give her some sort of patch or some sort of relief from her primary symptoms. And that is what they think that they're doing. And I understand it. You know, some of my best friends are doctors. I don't have a problem with doctors. I understand the mentality. I am a doctor myself. I went to medical school. I get it. Yeah, these are my buddies. And most doctors would say that they're really interested in helping their clients and helping their patients. And so that's why they give medicine. But if they really understood that the medicines, not only do they not work, but they actually induce, increase, perpetuate, or frankly cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat, then it would be no longer an interesting endeavor to write for them for anybody. That would not be what you would do. If you knew that the client's going to think for a moment that they're better, but over time, and not very long time after all, that their symptoms are going to be induced, increased, perpetuated, or frankly caused by the medicines you just gave them, then, you know, directly by the medicines, like a Band-Aid with a razor blade in it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? A Band-Aid with a razor blade in it works. If you have a cut and you take a big Band-Aid and you put it on your cut, the bleeding will stop for a moment. It worked. And then blood will start oozing out of the side of the Band-Aid and you'll think your cut got worse. But the last place that you'll think to look is inside the Band-Aid. But if the Band-Aid has a razor blade in it, it'll seep and create a larger cut and you'll think your cut is incurable, you know, recurrent. You'll think your cut is recurrent and you won't realize what's causing your cut to be recurrent is what you're doing in between each time that actually increases the size of the cut. This is the way that psychiatric medicines work. And I'm even going to go so far sometimes to say that this is the way that a lot of different industry medicines work. And it's really important to understand that. It's really important to get that. Like if the medicines are, you know, if the medicines are, look, I want to give a disclaimer here because there's a handful of people out there who are really sure that they have found their life by getting their diagnosis and then starting medicine, which is holding them together and they wouldn't trade it for anything. And they can't wait to get their nice psychiatric appointment next month so they can get their refill, so they can go to the pharmacy and so they can get their pills, so they can take them 1 or 2 times a day because nothing else could work as well as these do. And their whole life counts on it. They're so happy to have learned that they have this diagnosis. There's a handful of people like that. It's good. To those people directly, please don't ever change what you're doing. I'm not arguing with you. If you have found anything in life that works at that level, just keep doing it. You are so fortunate. Thank you. Congratulations. It's so fabulous. But frankly, there's tens of millions of people who don't meet that criteria, who are pretty sure that they're misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, overmedicated, undermedicated, not medicated, whatever they feel like they are, and that things are not going right for them. And this conversation about what diagnosis and medicine are, this is for them. And I really mean that. This is not about arguing for the people who have found their stability inside of the medical world. Like, oh yeah, I take a little touch of Xanax and Prozac every morning and it's the best. Okay. Good. I get it. Good for you. If this is as good as your life is going to get, then that's what you should keep doing. And again, it's not I don't mean to be condescending. I'm very real about this. If in anything in life you have reached a point where you're that sure that this is as good as it's going to get and you're pleased with how it is, by all means, for sure, keep doing that.
I love it. Well, this is very interesting. So your book, please do let us know, Dr. Fred, where people can find you. I know that your book is online, that they can get it for shipping and handling.
Yeah, the findyourtruevoicebook.com, you can find that. It pops up in a bunch of places on my website. It's at welcometohumanity.net, which is my main website. And it's at the drfred360.com, where you can see everything I'm up to, all my podcasts and my YouTubes and a couple freebies and you know, there's some slideshows and different you know, different things that I've done over time or that I'm involved with. You can set up a discovery call to be working with me individually. Or like I said, I'm very excited to introduce the Welcome to Humanity Circle group, which should be more in fruition in the next couple of weeks about how to really get into that. And that'll be a daily activity of community, people who are there for the right reason, there to learn how to live life, there to learn the Moss method, which includes gratitude and meditation and nature and creativity and pets and like spirituality and eating good food and detoxing and drinking lots of water and drinking lots of tea and pampering yourself and sleep hygiene. All these things are included in the Moss method. And these things are free and totally available and will upgrade your life. No kidding. Like, no joke. They will. They will. Seriously. You might say, I'm too depressed to do that. It's actually the other way around. If you do that, your depression will release. You're not too depressed to do it. You're just choosing not to do it. And along with that, you're declaring yourself to be depressed. Again, I don't mean to minimize the power of being depressed. It is really rough to be depressed. It is.
Yeah.
But is it a changeable state of affairs? 100%.
Yes.
For sure. And how do you do that? You take on different activities. You do things differently. If I wake up every morning and I just manage my first thought, which it might be that this isn't worth it. I don't have anything to do. I'm not worth anything. It's too hard out there, and I'm just going to stay in bed, pull the blankets over my head, and I might not even eat, might not feed the guys. I might just stay right here. And then I don't realize that was a choice that I made. Then before too long, I can, like when it gets to be 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, I can say, oh, there must be something wrong with me because I stayed in bed all morning. We sort of relinquish that responsibility for the decisions we make in our life. And there's ways to take authorship and to really, take agency, like to really take control and be the choreographer of our lives. We can do that from any setting, even when we're feeling overwhelmingly disempowered.
Great message. I am so pleased to have had you here today. Thank you so much for being our guest and get this great message. Thank you again.
Right. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.